Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? It's Matt here from YoVideogames. You know, I was going to continue on my Zelda memories on our road to E3, and I will get back to that, I promise, but something kind of came up today, or rather overnight, that I feel is worth discussing, and I feel it's something that's probably affected a lot of you guys, even if it's not a particular title that affects me. So, what I'm getting at here, of course, is Persona 5's North American release announcement. Now, I don't play Persona. I've never played a Persona. I've asked you dudes before, honestly, would I enjoy a Persona game? And I have been told, quite frankly and quite respectfully, no, I would not. So, I don't have a particular dog in the fight of Persona, but I think for the case of this video, this discussion here, I think it's something that's very important to me, and it's something that I think definitely needs to be brought up. Now, the big brouhaha about all of this, of course, is the fact that Persona 5 is relaunching in Japan this September 2016. And now we have confirmation it will not release in North America until Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2017. Now, of course, the immediate gut reaction is, hey, they wanted to get it out of the way of Final Fantasy 15. Of course, they also just moved it right into the path of Horizon's release date. But, hey, they're different genres at least, so maybe it's not a direct conflict right there. But here's the thing, though. And it's something that I've been talking about for a long time now, and that is, I really wish that major game publishers would act like global companies. Here's the funny thing. If you ever look at a press release for any game, you know, the one that comes out from the company itself directly from Capcom, directly from Sega, directly from Nintendo, they all say the same kind of bullshit in their last paragraph of every press release. You know, Capcom Entertainment is a world-renowned leader in the global market, or Nintendo is a global leader in, you know, video game iconic characters and branding, and yada, yada, yada. You know, I'm fudging that up a little bit, but, you know, you get what I'm saying if you ever find any press release ever. All of them sit there and claim and talk a big game about how they're this global leader in software entertainment. And the funny thing is the way they act, the way they treat us native North American English, or I guess Spanish speakers, is really not true at all. Like, they're not a leader in any sense of the word. They still, in a way, act like it's 1992, and these companies have American branches that get scraps off the table, and maybe when Japan's done with their game, we can come in there and translate the game and release it out here. Well, that's the sort of the funny thing about it, is that there's a lot of different grounds to cover on this. I'll cover the first part in that the console industry in Japan has been dying pretty hard over the last 5-6 years. It's bad. There's really not any major console franchise that sells better in Japan but also comes out in America. Now, there's plenty of franchises that only come out in Japan still, but you know, you look at Japan's biggest franchises right now, and they're mostly portable. We're talking like Monster Hunter, God Eater, stuff like that. Like, you got a lot of big portable games that still come out, you know, your Yokai Watches and whatnot, but when it comes to console games, big console IPs, America traditionally sells way beyond the Japanese sales. I mean, and this is even starting to come true of other things like Fire Emblem, where we're really starting to catch up, and that's portable pretty much right now. But you look at Final Fantasy, and you know, you look at even other things like Resident Evil, what have you, Devil May Cry's, they all sell way better in North America. And just the fact alone is, like, even looking beyond that broad scope, North America is the largest and biggest part of the global video game market. Japan has shrunk significantly since the HD era. It was already starting to falter a bit at the end of the PS2 era, the last of the standard definition eras, but through the HD era, it fell way behind. When we're talking raw sales data, the only one who's had sales data that breaks 10 million is Nintendo, and that's mostly because of their Wii Sports, Wii Fit series of games. Otherwise, though, you're not seeing games that break that kind of barrier. And the funny thing is that, you know, a lot of people like me who are hardcore gamers from the 80s and 90s, we still have this weird sort of strange affinity for Japanese games. Like I never could latch on to not Call of Duty, but Grand Theft Autos. I could never latch on to Elder Scrolls games. But you know, if you think about it, an Elder Scrolls game sells a ridiculous amount of copies. Like they're somewhere between like 10 and 20 million units for Skyrim. For Skyrim, you know, that is a ridiculous. We're talking like anywhere from like 5 times to maybe even 10 times, or maybe even more than 10 times the sales of, say, Persona 4. Persona is an interesting series because it really got its foothold in America on Persona 3. Now, there were 3 Persona games that came out on the PlayStation. Only 2 came to North America, but they were very, 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 very underground, and nobody really knew or cared about. Persona 3 on the PS2 is what got the series its footing and got it going. Persona 4 was kind of, you know, it's an underground success, a cult success. And then as we're building towards Persona 5, you know, Atlus and the whole Shin Megami franchise as a whole has greatly expanded. And here we are today where, again, we are getting Persona 5 in September, and then we get 5-6 months later, we'll get it in North America. Now you could say, hey, 5-6 months, that's much better than years it used to take. Sometimes it would take multiple years, or at least a year at best. And I remember during the GameCube era, it took 11 months for an RPG to come out on the GameCube after Japan. So yeah, I guess we're improving in a way, but at the same time, here's where, you know, I really want to focus on here. If we are the biggest market and we have the most users and we bring the most sales, why is it that we're treated as second-class citizens? And here's the funny thing. Whenever I make a video or bring up this topic, I always get defenders for the publishers, which is hilarious to me because here's the deal. Sega, Atlus, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about what you would personally like at all. All they want is your fucking money. Okay? They are trying to take your money. And they're even worse is they're trying to take your money that you have for spending, your frivolities. I mean, we love video games. I love video games, but they are not a necessity, okay? You know, they're not something that I need to live. It's not food, you know? I can survive without video games even if it's really boring. So these companies don't give a fuck about you, but you know what? They love the fact that you will, well, not you personally, but you know, they love the fact that people will defend them and that people will stick up for them when they're basically going against what anyone who's ever done any sort of business, schooling, or education would probably think is completely insane. And that is like, okay, you are ignoring your biggest market so you can appease what is usually sometimes your smallest market. Now, let's talk about the arguments against this. The argument against, say, Persona 5 is that it's a big game. It's the biggest game Atlus has ever had. In fact, I think on the official PlayStation blog by John Harding from Atlus, his exact quote was that, you understand what we mean, we're making sure every bit is in place. Persona has exponentially grown as a franchise. Considering that as our first numbered sequel since 2008, Atlus is taking its time to ensure this is the best possible experience. That is a load of horse shit straight from a PR person's mouth, if you believe that. Because here's the funny fucking thing. Persona 5 was officially announced in 2013 with its first teaser. That was 3 fucking years ago. You know, we'll be close to 4 when it gets out in North America. And it's been in development for even longer. If you look back at the development of the title, it was talked about and rumored about in 2011. So it's 5 fucking years ago. 5 fucking years ago that they knew Persona 5 was in development. Okay, now this is not, say, Xseed, and this is not NIS America. Because here's the thing, I want to be very, very clear on this. when it's a third party of a third party in a way, an Xseed, if you will. If it's a small localization branch, a small publisher, an indie title, I completely understand. You know, if you got a very tiny group of people, they make a really niche RPG, they release it in Japan, and then someone like Xseed comes along and said, hey, we would really like to bring that to North America, that makes sense. That is completely and utterly justifiable as to why you would be waiting on a title like that. But this is Persona. This is the longest running, or one of the longest running franchises in the company's history. And they've had an American branch in California for over a decade. A very, very long time. Possibly 20 years even. Like, this is not something new. Like, Atlas USA does have communication with Atlas Japan. And even more so, even more damning at this point, is Atlas is owned by Sega. Sega is still a multi-million-dollar corporation, okay? This is not some poor fucking, you know, tiny group of localizers who don't have the means or manpower to actually do this, and they have to graciously wait for the Japanese version to be done. Okay, this is a corporation. This is a big company that knew about the development of this game years ago, knew about every delay that it encountered, knew it was coming, okay, knew that the game was happening. And instead of basically using communication and just smart business sense and saying, look, we're a growing market, we're a huge market, we're the biggest fucking market in all of video games, let's collaborate, let's work together to make sure we can get a simultaneous or near as close to a simultaneous release as possible. Instead, they're still going the route of, we'll finish the game, and once we've got final code done or final build done, which will probably be around June, July, August, so somewhere around the next couple months, you know, instead they're going to wait for that, and then, hey, then we'll give you the game, and then you can take the text, and then you can translate it, dub it, and do all your shit. And the funny thing is that this is not something that should be acceptable in this day and age. Like, but it is. Somehow it still is. We're in an era where a game like Pokemon, with all its text, can have simultaneous releases. We are in an era where Zelda, which always has a large amount of text, can oftentimes come out in America first. Like, the last few big releases of Zelda actually come out in North America first. Final Fantasy 15 is coming out in North America and Japan, the simultaneous launch. Simultaneous launches are not completely foreign now. They're not these super rare occasions. They happen, and they can happen, and they could and should happen more. And my argument is always that if we're going to be buying the most copies of this game, we at least, at the very fucking least, deserve to have a simultaneous or damn near close to simultaneous release as possible. You know, another interesting thing was, I remember Odin Sphere on PS2 came out within a week of the Japanese launch in North America to Japan. And yet, for the newest one, which just launched today in North America, for the remake, it was a 5-month delay between the Japanese and American version. And it's funny because it's mostly the same fucking text, the same fucking voice acting, yet for some reason, because of the battle system or who knows what the fuck, Atlas needed 5 fucking months to do it. Now, people will say there's a lot I'm not understanding. There's all kinds of testing and a certification that goes into this. Yes, that is absolutely true. You do need to test a game when you translate it. You do need to certify the game through proper channels when you bring it to another country. That is all true. But you know what's also true is that you knew about the game years in advance, okay? Like, say it with me, years. This was known as a game coming before the PS4 was even out, okay? This is not something new. This is something, as proven with Pokemon, with Zelda, with Final Fantasy, that has been proven you can, with enough foresight, make sure you cover all your bases, get it tested, get it certified, get all that done so you can launch it in the same place at the same time and all around the world. So right now, I don't think some people may not understand why people are so frustrated, and this is why. Is because the game has been known for years, is coming from a multi-million-dollar publisher, and could have and should have, with enough foresight, been a simultaneous worldwide launch. Or, you know, at least a month, 2 months even, maybe even 3. You could have launched it early December. But instead, we're waiting till February. And we're waiting till February simply because Sega is Sega, and Sega is almost the worst, but not quite the worst, because they're not Konami. You know, Sega, I could say a lot about that company and how it's in such a fucking shambles of itself, of its former glory. And the really weird thing is that, like, it's mostly Atlus that still does its stuff. Like, when Sega took over Atlus, Atlus USA, for the most part, was left untouched. In fact, they're even looking into having Atlus localize other games for Sega, like Yakuza and stuff, from what I'm hearing. So it's not even like this is just because of Sega's takeover. No, it's for some reason, something has happened where now Atlus has basically lost all ability that it used to have. Again, I use Odin Sphere. I use Odin Sphere's near simultaneous worldwide launch on PS2, and then somehow it becomes a 5-month delay for the HD remaster on PS4. How does that fucking happen? Yeah, I don't, and we'll never get the answer to this. The most we'll ever get is that, hey, translating's hard and it takes a lot of work and a lot of coordination, and yes, it does. But you know what? When you are a giant corporation and you have offices and teams and all these people around the world who do this, someone needs to go into Japan and say, look, we're the biggest market. We're going to sell the most copies, especially because it's a console-only game. You know, if you got any weird reservations or hang-ups about it being released, you need to get the fuck over it. Because you got to sell to your biggest audience. You treat your audience with respect. Because the reality is, I wish game companies need to look at the people who buy the games not as fucking consumers who consume the product they sell, which is what we are viewed as. They need to look at us as investors. We are investing our time and our money into their product, and we are basically taking what is one of the most precious commodities there is, again, time, and we are giving it to them because we are assuming that what they're giving to us is going to be hours and hours of entertainment. We are the investors, so therefore we should be the ones clued in on this. We should be the ones who they are bending over backwards for. Again, these are video game companies. They sell and manufacture frivolous entertainment. Frivolous. So, because of that, they should be bending backwards to the people who are keeping them afloat. Because if it wasn't for the rabid Sonic fan base, if it wasn't for the growing trend and growing group of Persona and Shin Megami fans, if it wasn't for that, these companies, Atlus and Sega, would probably not be in any good position if they're even still in the game industry. They could be in a position just like Konami, where Konami has sunk absolutely all the goodwill with any gamer in all their franchises, and now they basically are left with nothing. Nothing but pachinko machines. So, really, it's something that I think needs to be discussed more, and I feel you, Persona fans. I'm not even going to play this game, but I think something needs to be said. Something really needs to be brought to task, and unfortunately, we won't. But if I was going to be a journalist at E3, I would absolutely be asking why this game wasn't being targeted for worldwide launch, especially that you had at the very least, 3 years of public knowledge, and possibly even more privately between the company, and somehow you still are at this point where you're waiting for them to finish it in Japan, and then you'll dub it and translate it. To me, that is fucking ridiculous, and it's screwing over your most ravenous and your largest fan base. Because here's the thing. Last thing I want to say about this is that the problem with releasing the game so early in Japan is that the PS3 and the PS4 are, for most intents and purposes, region-free. They can play Japanese games on any console. So here's the thing. You can import the games without any trouble and stick them in your PlayStation 3 and 4 and play through the whole game. And in the era of YouTube and with streaming, it will be all over the place. So now people are going to have to go out of their way if they don't want to be spoiled for this game for 5-6 fucking months, because these companies couldn't get their shit together years ago to make sure it was a simultaneous release. And here's the funny thing, I've done this song and dance myself. I have imported many RPGs and beaten them. There will be threads created on forums, and overviews of the game's story will be done. Like, I even did this with Xenoblade X when it launched in Japan. I had a group of people who could speak and read Japanese, and they were telling me everything going on in the story live with the audience. They were translating menus for me. Like, it can be done. You know, there will be a network of dedicated fans who are going to stream this game, who are going to archive this game. They're going to let's play it, and they're going to have English fucking overviews, or at least give you the very gist of the story, and everything will be fucking known before it comes out, and that's going to hurt their bottom line sales. It's going to hurt it a lot, and they probably don't even realize it. I don't know how you don't, if you're such an on-the-cusp gaming company like Atlas USA used to be. But the fact of the matter is, with streaming, with YouTube, with all of social media, with all the dedicated fans who can and will be importing it and playing it and translating it, or at least, you know, giving an overview to all the other importers who maybe aren't fluent in Japanese, the game's gonna be ruined. You will know everything about that game. Every fucking thing about that game will be known, will be documented, will be video recorded long before it comes out in February in North America. So, congrats, Sega. You just, not only did you screw over your fan base by making them wait and basically second-class citizening us, or making us wait all this time, but you're also going to make the entire appeal of discovering the game either impossible or just very hard and annoying for anyone who just wants to play the game fresh. Because now there's going to be tons of people who won't even need to buy it, because they'll just watch it being played completely on Twitch or on YouTube. So, congrats, Sega. Congrats, Atlas. You are really keeping up with the business times on this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the channel. Later, dudes.